Hi, it's Thursday, it's noon, and it's time for a disruptive conversation. And maybe all of us needs some change, something to think about, something to be intentionally disruptive of. And remember that disruption is not destruction. And today I am thrilled to have Anna Goldfarb as my guest. I see Anna has joined already. I'm waiting to get her invitation. She sent a request. All right, fingers crossed. Whoops, fingers crossed. Up. Hi, everyone who's joining us today. Let's see if this is moving ahead. Oh, and we're buffering, and here we are. Oh my word, we are connected on the Instagram Cosmic Hotline today, Anna. You know, definitely. So I'm going to introduce the show and myself, and I'm going to introduce you. Hi everyone, and welcome to Disruptive Conversations, in which we deep dive into the experiences of women who are influencers, thought leaders, educators, authors, entrepreneurs, attorneys, artists, visionaries, in which we deep dive into the experiences and challenges they've needed to navigate and conquer in order to have created their personal and professional success up to this point in time. I'm Dr. Risa Reiger, clinical psychologist, and I'm an expert in change. The good news is that change can happen at any point in time. You're never too late. And in order to create change, we need to disrupt. You need to disrupt a thought, a feeling, a belief, a habit, a behavior in order to create your 10.0 life. And here to help us today with that, I am thrilled to have Anna Goldfarb, who's going to be talking about her journey and also something that's really near and dear to her heart, her life, and how this affects other people as well. So Anna Goldfarb is the author of Modern Friendship: How to Nurture Our Most Valued Connections. And she explores the nuances of navigating adult friendships, which are its own entity at this point in time. She's also her reporting has appeared in the New York Times, the Atlantic, Time, Vox, and more. And she also publishes a Friendship Explained. I love that.
Yeah.
A Substack newsletter that explains the mechanics of friendship through the lens of pop culture. So Anna, welcome. So thrilled to have you here today. And so is there something you would like to add to the bio that I just read?
Yeah, like I'm a reporter. Being a reporter is all about asking good questions. And I felt like there was so much about friendship that's so mysterious. And it just felt like this realm of our lives that no one really has a handle on. So I just thought friendship was the perfect subject for my journalistic training of what is going on here. Is this what's normal? Like what is even normal now?
Yeah.
And just asking interesting questions about it.
So I hope that this will be an interesting question for you, which is, what did you need to disrupt inside of yourself in order to have created your personal and professional success up to this point in time?
Well, think my I think I had to disrupt my sense of entitlement, of feeling entitled to my friendships that I've had, for decades. I think that's something we have to check. It's almost like I need a reality check about entitlement to people's love and affection and attention. That seemed like ripe for disruption. I think I just took it for granted that my friends would want to be my friend indefinitely, Um, I don't see a lot of culture, a lot of questions about why do we feel so entitled to other people's time and love and attention? What do you think?
Well, about that,
Yeah.
that look, I think, as a psychologist, as a clinical psychologist, and consulting and working with people, that from our earliest moments of life, connection is everything.
Yeah.
And connection is what we need to survive. I mean, literally, when we're first born, we need to have a connection with our caregiver. And so we're hardwired in many respects to connect unless we're thwarted in different kinds of ways. And so
Mhm.
there's an initial connection and that initial attachment that helps to create the lens through which we can see friendships, know, have a sense of what we can expect, what we shouldn't expect, and what we've learned not to expect.
Mhm.
So, so I'm wondering just, how did that come up for you? And how did that really, spark and ignite this tremendous interest for you?
I felt like my friendships in my late 30s were these wild stallions that were pulling me in all different directions. And I have a lot of people are like me. I'm a pinball. I don't live where I grew up. I grew up in a different time zone, and I will never organically run into my friends from childhood. And there's such a deep pain there. There's just this loss and this constant grief of, I miss a time and a place and people that are out of reach. And I think more and more people feel like that. We have these connections, these deep, meaningful connections that we forged when we were, younger. Our lives were more simple, and there's just such a nostalgia and longing for these friendships that I just didn't really understand why what the status was. And learning about friendship, the most important thing I learned is that we have two kinds of friendships. We have active friendships and memorial friendships. And even just having the language to describe what we're seeing of the word friend is so inadequate. It's like there's so many different levels of intimacy in different friendships. And that was part of the confusion I was feeling of, these were my friends from my youth. Are they still my friends today?
Mhm.
And that created a lot of angst in me and a lot of complicated feelings. But learning like, oh, these are memorial friendships. They're based on affection. We aren't in touch as frequently, but it doesn't mean that we don't have meaning for one another. That gave me a lot of peace, and like knowing how to categorize the complicated relationships we've all cultivated.
What what you're saying is really important, and it's bringing, we're not scripted here, so it's we get to be who we are together in real time. And as you're talking, I'm thinking about these two different aspects of these memorialized, as you term them, the memorialized friendships and the friendships of now. And in the memorialized friendships, there's that sharing history at a point in time, so that you can say something like, oh, remember when, or when I went to this local store, that people know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Not only do they know what you're talking about, but there's also a felt sense about it, and and the place that it held at that point in time in life. So that's on the memorialized friendships. And so memorialized friendships, the question is, well, are we always in the past?
Mm.
And that's where our shared time lives. Our friendships of the moment are are building those kinds of references, right? Of shared understanding in the moment, but
Mhm.
without having that historic basis
Yeah.
of of lived history together.
Yes, and like I realize how important it is just having the correct language. That's been a huge motivator for me, is giving people the language of here's to identify what I'm seeing, and with the language comes peace of okay, now I know how to categorize this collection of friends that I've made over decades. Um, it was really exciting to me to give that to other people too, of here nothing's wrong. Like I think if anything, problems arise when we have mismatched expectations, and we expect a memorial friend to be as available as an active friend. Like, then you can start calibrating your expectations once you know the proper category to place your friends.
Now, don't you think that a memorial friend can also become an active friend?
Oh, absolutely. And part of that is learning how to negotiate a friendship. And,
What do you mean?
yeah, like I don't think we're given very many models of what negotiating a friendship looks like. But I realize I do this pretty often of, looking at an older friend and saying, I'm going to spend more time with you. What's important to you? How can I help? Like, what are your goals? How can I help you reach a goal that's important to you? And that's a very different kind of question in your friend making than, do you want to get lunch or do you want to get a drink? Where there's no energy of like, well, why are we getting together? What's the momentum? During the pandemic, a lot of the advice was reach out to people now. And it made me think, well, okay, you reach out to this old friend, you talk for 2 hours, it's a great talk, but then you actually talk less after because you're like, oh, I talked to her, she's fine, she's busy, I downloaded the updates. But where was the momentum to keep the friendship going? So that's where these questions came from of, okay, so we all talked to our oldest friends during the pandemic, but did it translate into actually reducing loneliness? Did it translate
Mm.
into having daily a daily presence in our friendships? And that's where the misconnect is in pop culture and the way that we talk about friendships.
That's really important. And we certainly know that, from a health perspective, that when Vivek Murthy was the U.S. Surgeon General, he really talked about the epidemic of
Hmm.
loneliness. And when Dr. Ruth was alive, right, she was what, the ambassador of friendship, or
Hmm.
the ambassador to counter loneliness and isolation. So it holds a very important part of our humanity.
Yeah, and I felt that the advice was lacking nuance of reach out to people. It's like, well, how do you translate that reach out attempt into an active friendship? And that's what I wanted to understand is, what's the difference between reaching out to a friend, having a great talk, and then you still don't see them. You still don't integrate them into your life. Like, well, what's the benefit? How is that actually helping our loneliness crisis? And those are the questions that drove my work.
So what are you seeing now in terms of how that translates?
Well, it translates with, well, understanding like, what is an active friendship? What makes one friendship active over another friendship? Why do I desire one particular time with one friend over another friend? And what I learned is that this is a question of desire in a friendship. What makes us want to have that desire? And I learned that every friendship needs a clear and compelling about.
Mm,
And that was a light bulb moment for me because I think people misunderstand friendship, that affection is enough to keep a friendship active. But our phones are full of friends, but we never call them. So it was like, well, what's with this paradox? If we have constant access to our favorite people on the planet, but we don't reach out to them, what's going on here? And I learned it's about what's outside of your friendship with someone. A friendship needs another reason where you marvel at the world together, side by side.
yes.
And the strength of that about, is it clear what it is? And is it compelling to both people? And that really clicked a lot into place for me of, well, what do I talk about with my best friends versus my casual friends? Um, how do we how do these abouts influence us in all sorts of ways? For us, I mean, we all have busy, complicated lives. To tell our spouses or partners, you're on your own for dinner tonight because I'm seeing my friend, because we want to talk about this thing that is so important to both of us. Like, you need that reason. And I know that we're in this bailing, ghosting, flaking sort of age. And the reason that people bail is because the reason for the get together is unclear or not compelling. So it's easy to bail on a friend when you don't know why they want to see you. It's like,
So let me share this with you because I made a promise to myself. And here it is, and I'd love your thoughts on this. So I promised myself that if I thought of someone and I was someplace where I could give them a call, even if it was a fast one, that I was going to do that. And so that's like part with the other thing, and I would love your thoughts about this also. So I'm giving you a two-parter
okay.
here. Okay. And so the part two is that at this age and time, just to actually pick up a phone and call someone is almost like an etiquette no-no, that you have to first text someone and make a determination whether this will actually escalate to the next level of a phone call at some
Mhm.
particular point in time. And it's just this notion of connection, and that there's so much that's happening on texting, which, you talk about nuance, that
Mhm.
that can often lose nuance, and not communicate accurately what you meant. You have autocorrect, which I'm sure has gotten. If anyone's listening, don't tell me you haven't gotten into trouble with autocorrect. I know everyone's gotten in trouble with autocorrect. So, what are your thoughts about not just friendship, but just like all of the etiquette
I know.
around
Well,
it?
a lot of it is uncertainty. I think people are shying away from answering phone calls because they're uncertain of why are you calling me? Like,
Mm.
what? And the uncertainty creates anxiety. So one of the things I advocate for is removing uncertainty at almost every touch point with a friend of, I want to call you to talk about places we can go to dinner. Like, is it a good time for me to ring you? Like, helping your friend out, because there is so much uncertainty in our friendships. Why are you reaching out to me? Like, what do you need? Why me? Is this going to cost me money? Is this going to cost me time? Like, what is the thrust? And by putting more effort up front into how we reach out to other people, we'll have more successful efforts. um, Especially men. Men are really resisting, I think, a lot of this effort that friendships require. I think a lot of people want their friendships to be easy and have no negotiation. And they think there's so much, my family, my job, I have to negotiate, I have to be mindful of these dynamics all the time. With my friends, I don't want to do this. But that's a shame, and it's short-sighted, because this is what people need to say yes to your invitations. Like, you need to put more effort up front. So that's the battle that we're waging, is, people even wrapping their heads around putting effort into their friendships like this.
There's a higher
Yeah.
threshold, you know,
Yeah.
threshold. And just we were chatting for a couple of minutes before we got on today on the Instagram live, and Anna, we were talking about, it's just having that person that you grew up
Mm.
with,
Yeah.
who really knows your history and is seeing the ups and downs in your family, and is familiar with not just your own
Mhm.
disappointments and places where you really, kind of like had a shining moment, but they just know that. And we have a tendency to do a lot of explaining, but that doesn't happen so much now, that where people grew, even if someone stays put where they grew up,
Mhm.
the people around them are moving
Yeah.
around.
Yeah, and the kind of society we live in now. We live in a society where people don't stay at the same jobs as long. They move around more often. They travel more for work, or they do more remote work where they're, sequestered and have their own their habits and daily life have revolved around the remote work. They're not out and about and let's meet for happy hour. Like all these norms have changed, and it makes it even more crucial that we pay attention to how our messages land in these cluttered, overwhelming inboxes. We're sending messages using old strategies and they're not working. When you text a busy person, "Are you around for dinner this week?" It's like, well, to do what? For why? Why do you want dinner? What do you need? Like, why me? You need to give more information. So that's where we're finding ourselves.
That's it. It's really something to think about, that we have to be clear about an agenda. We have to be
Mhm.
clear about whether or not there's an ask,
Mhm.
and that we've come to a point in our social development where our nervous systems are in a protective mode
Yeah. Yeah.
often, of, well, this person I know or I've met is calling me, like, this, what do I have to gird myself for,
I
you know
know.
rather than, hey, met, that was really great, really enjoyed meeting you, and let's just have a conversation.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you look at it through this lens of, am I helping my friends out by removing uncertainty? Am I helping them understand my interest in getting together and also what's in it for them? I don't think people ever look at, I mean, I certainly didn't before I did research in this topic, but I never spent any energy thinking, why would a friend want to talk to me right now? It's like, I miss my friend. I'm thinking of her. I'm going to interrupt whatever she has going on, whatever she's doing, to be like, hey, I'm thinking of you. I miss you. And it feels good, but it didn't really get us closer to one another. It didn't establish these active friendships where we see each other all the time. And so I wanted to learn more about it.
So what was one of the, of the research that you've done, which is, great, you're a journalist, so you're not
Not
someone who's just
a
like,
guru, right?
one could say that. And so, of the research, because friendships have changed over time, and
Mhm.
the way that, and you touched on the way that women approach friendship, the way men approach friendship can be different. It doesn't mean that one's better than the other. They're just different. But I'm wondering if, in the research that you've done, was there a particular piece of research that you found that when you saw it, you went, "Oh, okay, I really need to pay attention to this one."
Um, I did see a small study from Professor Carolyn Weiss of University of Puget Sound, and she did a small study of a few dozen college kids, and she wanted to predict who would be close friends in 4 years' time. And what she found was that friends who practiced social identity support with one another were much more likely to maintain a friendship. So I was like, well, what is this thing? What is social identity support? It's the most generic 3 words I've heard. I'm like, I don't know what this is. So I called her up when
Good
I
for
was,
you. You called her.
yeah, I called her up and I asked her when I was writing my book, I said, like, help me understand this. And basically, she said social identity support is seeing your friend for all the roles they play in their life, their race, class, gender, and taking that into account when you practice your friendship. And what that means is, you know, keeping in mind your friend's financial class. Like if you are proposing plans that are, let's go to a yacht and have a spa day and your friend's on unemployment, that can make your friend feel like unseen of, don't you see I have these limitations? When you see your friends when you ask about what foods they grew up eating. I want to learn about your background, Risa. I want to learn where you went growing up, what foods you love to eat. I want to see how you practice your traditions. Well, that says that I'm interested in you as a person, not just someone to go out with and have a good time. And that makes people, that's the good, delicious part of friendship is when your friend sees you for all those roles you play. And real quickly, I want to, explain that our friendships have evolved from being more favor based of, hey, can you get me a cup of sugar? Can you get me a ride to the airport? To more entertainment based now of let's get dinner, let's get lunch, let's get drinks, let's go out. And that shift has made our friendships feel more superficial. And it's been easier to shed them because it's like, well, what's our friendship about? We go out for dinners. We just it's easier to not prioritize a friendship if it's based on these sort of frivolous things. But when you tell a friend, I'm interested in you, I want to come to your house, I want to care about what you care about. That's a very different message, and those friendships are much more likely to last longer.
That's really important. That it's value based. I mean, before it sounded like a agenda, and that someone could be just interested. I mean, this is the first time we're meeting, and I'm like, what an interesting person. She's found friendship to be a topic of interest, of passion, of really delving into it. and
Yeah.
and that's so important, and particularly now, as you say, as people are more mobile, and that they have a certain amount of like shelf life in a particular place, like families where someone's working in a company, and the way that you move ahead and the way that you get promoted is by taking the jaws of life and taking you, and if you have a family, taking the jaws of life, uprooting you
Mhm.
from where you've established ties and plopping you someplace else for you to do this again and again. And what does that mean? And how does that affect us in terms of our friendships and having continuity of a self narrative that's shared by another? I've never used that before. It
That's
just,
brilliant. Yes, that's a brilliant way to put it. Yes.
um, so but because it's so important, our narrative. I mean, it's one of the things that I write about in my book. I'm soon in the fall, October 20th
Congratulations.
posted. But that how do we have shared narratives that we
Mm.
can value, understand, see the multifaceted nature of the person across from us, seeing them as more than an ask, being experienced as someone who is willing to be a giver, to help support, to help promote, to do all of that. But how do we see the fullness and experience the shared narratives of each of us, and then create something different as a function of being together, which is what you and I are doing right now,
Yeah.
in essence. So this time goes very
Cool.
quickly. I love relationships. I love conversation. I hope that's coming across. And it's just been so wonderful speaking with you, and hearing more about you, and you as this person who is interested in what's so critically important for all of our well,
Yeah.
I mean, literally for our wellness is connection. So, Anna, what is your next disruption?
Oh my gosh. Next disruption. Well, I'm very interested in how men and women negotiate their friendship different styles. And the one of the most interesting things I learned was that in our innermost intimacy tier, men usually just have one person. It's usually their significant other, but women have two. They have a significant other and their best friend. And so there is a difference in practicing friendship when you're in a marriage, valuing friendships. And I'm just really interested in how we can understand what we're seeing. When women look at their partners and say, well, how come he's letting his friendships atrophy and I'm fighting so hard for mine to stay afloat? Like, what am I seeing? So that's a question that's really piqued my interest, of how to understand what we're seeing.
Exactly. And and why is it that he doesn't have more friendships? Because he has you.
I know.
You 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 are helping him live longer. He has
Yes.
to help him live longer. But I'm not saying this isn't a versus. This is just where the data is coming out.
Yes.
And that women need the friendship of other women for their
Yes.
longevity.
Yes.
Um,
I mean,
so
isn't that fascinating
it
that
is
there's this
fascinating.
like
Well,
kind of
we're
divergence?
going to
But
talk about that in our next conversation,
deal.
Anna. Conversation to be continued. So right now we need to do our cover shot.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do a
Let me
fluff. You need fluff,
proof.
fluff,
I've been
little fluff. Okay.
a little sick, so this is my best effort to like not look like a
Oh, please. Uh, Most importantly is that here we are together sharing this
yeah.
information with our great communities. All right. Okay. Ready? Okay. Here's one and one more. Anna, thank you so very much for coming on and sharing your story, your journey, and your interest and your passion about friendship. It is connection is everything. Connection is everything in life. And for anyone who has missed part of today, if you know somebody who hasn't had a chance to listen to this, we're going to be posting this on our Instagrams. And so you haven't missed your opportunity. And I will be back with you next time. Remember that positive change can happen at any point in time. You're never too late. Can't wait to see you next week. And I've saved a seat for you. So see you then. Thanks so much, Anna.
Bye.
Bye.